Hi, I'm Greg Sando, and I'm here with Delta David Gier, who wears at least two hats. Under one of those hats, he's the music director of the South Dakota Symphony, and under the other hat, you conduct all the young people's concerts for the New York Philharmonic.
That's right.
And you are the first person ever, even including Leonard Bernstein, is this right, to conduct all of them
At
in
least
a season?
It's at least since the last 50 years.
Right, at least since they started keeping records.
Right. Yeah.
Prehistoric times don't
right.
count.
Exactly.
But it's a fabulous distinction, and I have heard you in both these capacities. And I don't know, this is a very bad phrase to use. You do a hell of a job. But you do, unlike the man that was so famously said about.
Thank you.
But maybe could start by talking about South Dakota, because people probably know less about that than they do about the Philharmonic.
It's true.
And say something about what it's like being music director of an orchestra in Sioux Falls, what you try to do, what you've accomplished.
Well, I mean, you do the same as you would pretty much in any other music directorship, or what you should do is find your points of engagement with the community and, take the orchestra forward and try to build. Interesting thing that sort of has happened in Sioux Falls is I have to back up to when I was a candidate there, because during that candidate week you do a lot of things, but one of the things you do is have your requisite interview with the local newspaper, right? So I did that, and we spent probably a good hour and a half together, and we talked about a lot of different things. But on Thursday of that week, the paper comes out, and the headline reads, "Conductor says contemporary music is very important." And I thought, I'm dead.
He's dead.
They're never going to hire me.
Him.
But then they did.
They did, and then you made good on that.
Well, but the question was, how did I make good on it?
Yes.
Then, so literally the day that I was going to get on the plane to go to South Dakota to sign the contract, I'm out in my front yard in Montclair, New Jersey, and Steve Culbertson, the publisher of Subito Music, a neighbor of mine, pulls up to the curb and yells at me. He says, "Hey, David, guess what? One of my guys just won the Pulitzer." And it was Paul Moravec, right? And I said, "Great, congratulations." He went off. I went to the airport. I'm sitting on the plane. I thought, a season of Pulitzer Prize winning composers. That way, you don't have to take my word for it.
That's right.
That's not to say that everything the Pulitzer Committee says is golden, but, Now,
this is how we got to know each other. You had done this very successfully.
Right.
And then you wanted the world to know, and I was one of the people that you emailed to tell
That's
about
right.
it. And I thought this was a devastatingly good idea, because you're performing it to people in Sioux Falls who, not unlike people in New York City and Chicago, the orchestra audience are not too excited about hearing new music.
Well, they don't have any record with it anyway.
They don't have a track record. They're not familiar with it. They're not sure of themselves. And on the whole, they probably would prefer to buy tickets for a concert without it. But now you come along and you say, well, these pieces won the Pulitzer Prize. And they think, oh, I have to take that seriously.
That's exactly right.
Because it has the imprimatur. And that, I would say, is going to work better in Sioux Falls, where people still have a sense of optimism, maybe, and not in a cynical place like New York. Pulitzer, Schmulitzer, what do I care about that?
Right. That's probably true. But you're right. That first season was a big success. And, of course, I chose the pieces very carefully, and I programmed them alongside works that were, very recognizable and that people were coming to hear. But and it was the usual suspects. The first year it was Corigliano and Rouse, and Schwantner and John Adams.
People who write music that is not going to be incomprehensible on first hearing. Elliott Carter might have been a different story.
That's true. No, I'm not going to. I wasn't going to do that on
the
orchestra
first
run.
As well.
Absolutely, absolutely. But the other thing was that the vision, or at least my my mission in this was that the subscribers of our orchestra would get a broad familiarity with the leading composers of our time. When you look at an orchestra that, an orchestra's way of programming contemporary music, oftentimes contemporary will mean a smattering of works from the first half of the 20th century, which still sound contemporary to people, and then works by local composers. What I find sort of lacking is the idea that we need to be looking for the best contemporary music that we can find and programming it regularly.
I noticed something else too, which is that different conductors seem to have their favorite composers or their favorite styles. If Marin Alsop is your music director, you're going to hear a lot of James Macmillan, for example. It has nothing against him or her. It's a fact. If Daniel Barenboim is your music director, you're going to hear a lot of European modernist music.
Yes, that's
probably not going to hear Christopher Rouse. And so you were trying to do, within the understandable limits that you set up, as broad a spectrum as you could.
Right, a real big swath. And go into this, Paul Moravec came out the first season. Go into the second season, the way we sort of stretched it, and what we did was we put a piece by a Pulitzer Prize-winning composer on every single concert. And not little pieces, not just concert openers, but,
big pieces.
Good,
Sure.
15, 20 minutes that first season. The next season we stretched it a little bit because Stephen Stuckey won for his second concerto for orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of an interesting story. I was, I had this program in January that I'd sort of reserved a slot for the Pulitzer Prize winner. We're coming to the end of the season because, the Pulitzer's not announced until April. Yeah. So this is right before the brochure is going to print. And I heard about this piece, and I got the score immediately. I looked at it, ascertained that we could do it justice, and I called Stephen out of the blue. Didn't know me from Adam, right? I caught him in his studio at Cornell, and I said, Stephen, here's the deal. I have this 10 or 15-minute slot for this year's Pulitzer Prize winner. But if you will come to Sioux Falls, I will scrap that program, and we'll give a whole half to this, but I want you to be on stage with me, and I want to tear the piece apart for a good 20 minutes or so with the orchestra, and I want you to tell us how you composed your piece. And he said, I'm in.
Yeah. What composer is going to resist that?
Well, right. So, and that worked really well. I mean, we did Brahms double on the first half, so, that was a great way to start the concert. But the whole second half was, how great is that? Did you have the reigning Pulitzer Prize winner telling you how he composed his piece?
Freshly anointed in the news. And there he is. Now, there are a lot of directions we can go to. This is sort of your marquee achievement in Sioux Falls. I think it's what you are known for outside the city.
Well, but let me just tell you what happened this last weekend.
Yeah.
Because it sort of ties the whole thing together. Yeah?
Yeah.
This is very interesting because we did 3 years of this Pulitzer kind of programming. This is my fourth season. Mm-hmm. We did not do the Pulitzer this year. We have had lots of different contemporary music on the program, but this year I departed from it. And one of the things that I wanted to do that I began this year was to introduce European composers one at a time. Who are the likely candidates to be considered the giants of the second half of the 20th century? So